Hello, everyone. My name is Seraphi, and I'm happy to meet you all. Today, we're going to do a little bit of a different discussion. I have with me Harmak, the Fluffle Guru, and Khrome, the Gravekeeper Guru, and the three of us are going to discuss an interesting topic, which is have skills at this point gone too far in Duel Links? Now, this is a topic of conversation that comes up, probably at least twice a year on Reddit and on YouTube. So it's not new for people to say, "Ooh, this most recent skill is surprising," or that it's gone too far. But I genuinely believe that the Soul of Light and Darkness skill has taken things to an extreme that we haven't seen before, which is going to be part of the discussion. But before that, let's meet our contestants. So I do need to let the audience know that Harmac and I have already had a discussion similar to this, which you all have not seen yet. We recorded the Meet the Fluffle Guru video previously, and it's not coming out until next week. So if something happens where Harmac and I are talking and we're referencing something you guys don't understand, it is because you are watching the videos in reverse order, and I do apologize about that. Harmac, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Seraphi. Yes, audience, I can imagine I might repeat myself a few times, but this talk is going to be more extensive than what was in the Meet the Guru video. So hopefully we should have a huge amount of talking points to mention. And we also have Chrome, who shall give us another view on the topic.
Yeah, well, hello everyone. You should know me by now at this point. But basically, the topic did come up in a chat with Seraphi as well. Basically, I'm more concerned with the direction the skills are going into the future.
All
So,
right. Everyone has their own ideas and their own opinions, and it's entirely possible that those opinions change throughout the course of the discussion. That's part of the point of having the discussion. So, and it's also possible. I had a few people who wanted to join this discussion who weren't able to today. I might make a part two to this if there's interest with Notorious Cly and Goldmine. But regardless, we'll go ahead and we'll focus right now. So, for starters, let's discuss the history of skills and the reason why skills exist in the first place. Um, Harmac and I have different opinions on this. I'll start with mine, and then Harmac can go with his, and then we'll listen to Chrome. So, skills have existed since the start of Duel Links, and they have either coincided with or inspired the real world speed duel format, which has its own skills, and those skills are different from the skills that we see in Duel Links. In fact, the early speed duel meta in the TCG was dominated by Serpent Knight Dragon because there was a unique skill for Serpent Knight Dragon that was very impressive, actually. Um, and right now, I think insects are broken, but regardless, skills in Duel Links, in my opinion, exist to facilitate two things. Number one, we have four cards in our opening hand, which is intended to compensate for the fact that we have such a small deck size. However, the game is not balanced around a four card hand. And while there are a lot of decks that you see in the modern game which can make do with four cards, that's why we have hand traps, because you can play a full turn with only three or two cards in your hand, then the other cards in your hand can be used to disrupt your opponent. But older decks, especially decks that see play in older animes, require more cards to activate. In particular, fusion and ritual cards, because they require additional resources in your hand besides simply the materials to summon a monster. Fusions require a fusion spell, rituals require both a ritual spell and the ritual monster in the hand. And this is a problem essentially created by power creep. Um, as the summoning mechanics got better, the older summoning mechanics fall off. And in the modern game, the entire ritual theme, every ritual deck that comes out, uh, is basically designed around the archetypes are designed around compensating rituals for how inherently bricky and terrible the summoning mechanic itself is. Ritual decks get way more card advantage than basically any other format, any other deck, because they have to have so many cards in their hand to do anything at all. And we see this with skills. Uh, we see the Destiny Hero skill, Destiny Effect, which allows you to not only get a free polymerization without even putting the card in your deck, but it also allows you to get malicious Destiny Hero Malicious in your graveyard, which allows you to get an additional either Link or Xyz or Fusion material on your field for free. One could argue that this sort of thing is necessary for Fusion and Ritual decks because, well, they need to have polymerization or their ritual spell to actually play their turn. And would it be worse for the game if you didn't draw these cards and you just had to set 3 and pass? Yes, probably. But there may be some other ways to address this, in my opinion. Okay, that's it for the history of skills. Harmak, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree that both fusion and ritual probably would rely more on skills to balance out their advantage. I would also mention that just in general, the older archetypes, or at least archetypes that seem to be more bricky, perhaps require more 2 to 3 card combos, um, might sometimes need the assistance of the skill to perhaps rebalance their hand and make it so they can start playable. Um,
Oh,
so it's
my apologies, Harmak. Do you mind if I cut in for just a moment?
go ahead.
Sorry. There's one other thing I wanted to add, which is that we're seeing a rise, and Chrome mentioned this. So this is kind of what brought on the thought process. We're seeing a rise of skills that allow high level monsters to be normal summoned. There's a new Blue Eyes skill that allows you to normal summon Blue Eyes without tributing. We have the Dark Magician skill that allows you to normal summon Dark Magician without tributing. There are now multiple skills that allow you to summon Elemental Hero Neos without tributing, and there's one that allows you to summon Ancient Gear Golem without tributing, and then the probably the most powerful one is Unstoppable Train, which allows you to summon any level 10 machine without tributing and then negate its effects for the rest of the turn. In the same way that a skill makes up for the fact that you don't have polymerization in your hand, I would argue that these skills make up for the fact that we don't have ancient rules in our hand. Like the Dark Magician skill, the Dark Magician, Elemental Hero Neos, and Blue Eyes, they're all kind of balanced around cards like Silver's Cry or Dark Magic Veil or Ancient Rules. And if we had those cards and we were able to run like more cards, we would essentially be able to summon them for free anyway. But the question is that balanced? Is that what we want to promote? Is that good for the game, good for the spirit of Duel Links, etc.? Sorry, Harmac, go ahead.
Yeah. So and it all boils down to these skills are meant to make the decks consistent that are not consistent by modern day standard. Um, to add on to our history section, I believe skills were more generic. There are more life point draining skills in the past, um, and they weren't always built for one specific deck, but they could still like increase consistency, whether it was through balance, getting you the right mix of spells and traps and monsters, whether it was Destiny Draw, allowing you to have some comeback potential. Um, and I think one of the first few instances where I remember they started doing the you trade one card in your hand for another card. Um, I believe I remember it was Resonators seemed to get that pretty early on, and perhaps also Gaia. And that's when we saw this new trend of instead of having life point requirements or more hefty requirements that would perhaps require a few more turns to take off, it would simply be merely you trade one type of card in for another type of card. And that's kind of been the majority of new skills nowadays. They've changed it up a bit, such as maybe you'll need to normal summon a creature to activate the effect, or you'll need to put one card in your pendulum deck. But essentially, the costs are almost non-existent these days, um, and that does boost playability, especially since all the new archetypes and decks will get off the ground by turn 1 or turn 2. And so skills can't be as slow as they once were. Do you have anything to add to that, Chrome, in terms of talking
Yeah,
about how skills have developed?
yeah. I think what brought up to the conversation with Seraphi, I don't mind skills that boost playability of the certain decks. The only thing I have to add to what skills are supposed to do is they're also a bridge to bring more nostalgic players into the game. If you look specifically to speed duels, I've said this before about Rush. Rush feels like what it's like to watch Yu-Gi-Oh! When the game doesn't really have that, and I think skills also act as a way to simulate what the anime does a lot of the time. Like it creates explosive plays that feel good. My issue with skills right now, it's not that they boost consistency or they boost playability, is the fact that they, for some decks, become the entire strategy. It's not only the fact that the Black Luster Soldier skill fills your graveyard, which is with everything you're ever gonna need. Is the fact that it does that, plus it gives you more advantage, plus it allows you to search stuff. For example, one of the skills that I really hate in the game is the Dark Magician skill that allows you to normal summon Dark Magician once per turn. It also searches cards from your hand. It is consistently the crux of the turn of a Dark Magician player is using the skill over and over and over.
I hear that
And
quite often, Chrome, and people say, "Oh, I don't like that," or it's not what skill should be. Um, but often, like I understand that perhaps it might feel a bit samey,
mhm.
but as long as it's not making it the most broken deck in the format, how is exactly that wrong? How is it incorrect?
Well,
How is it the incorrect way to build a
It's
well,
skill?
hold
that's what
on,
I'm
hold
saying.
on. It is making it the most broken deck in the format, though. BLS is tier one.
Currently, I mean, currently, yes. I mentioned Dark Magician because
Yeah,
it's not a broken issue for me. It's a design issue,
Mhm.
yeah.
and it is a design issue because skills work on a different level than cards. You cannot interact with skills. You can interact with cards. You cannot interact with skills. You can see this, for example, in when speed rays were meta. I was having trouble. I one trick gravekeepers and duel links, of course. Um, and I was having trouble with speedroids because their skill allowed them to special summon from graveyard, and because it was a skill, not a card, Necro Valley did not interact with them. So that's my main issue with it. I'm not saying we need a skill to negate skills, but at the same time, you're giving certain decks a lot of tools that work a tier above what you can respond with.
That's fair.
That's
Especially
why.
with the BLS example and the Speedroid example. But I don't think all the skills are equal, and I don't think our examples are equal. It's just that I can perhaps understand more the distaste for BLS or Speedroid, but it's just that when people say the Dark Magician skill, it does too much, or they get to do a thing each turn. I don't necessarily think there's too much inherently wrong about it,
Oh no,
apart from
I
people
think
believing Dark Magician wouldn't be able to do this without the skill.
I think
yeah, but
you're, if you don't mind, Chrome.
yeah, go ahead.
I think you're kind of missing Chrome's point a little bit, Harmac. Let me see if I can phrase it a little bit better. Chrome is taking an issue, which I've heard a lot about on Reddit as well, with the idea that the skill is piloting the deck, not the player. In other words, when you have such a clear formula in front of you of you need to take this step, then that follows into this step, and it creates its own little linear combo, it reduces decision making. So not only is the turn more samey, not only is the game more predictable, but it also, for people who care about the competitive nature, it takes it takes the impressiveness off the player's actions. Like if I'm playing Dark Magician, right, and I'm playing this skill as opposed to the thankfully Konami has unlimited Dark Magician, so you can play it without the skill now. But regardless, if I am playing the Magician's Magic skill and I normal summon Dark Magician, I activate the skill and I draw Secrets of Dark Magic, and then I go into battle, I attack with Dark Magician, and then play Secrets of Dark Magic during the battle phase and fusion summon to get an extra 2,800 points of damage. Or maybe I trade and bring out both Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl. Like I trade into something that has 2,800, bring out both Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl with the Dark Magician's effect, and then go for lethal. That would normally be a fairly impressive maneuver. But because I was able to normal summon Dark Magician without making any combos, like I didn't have Ancient Rules, I didn't have Dark Magic Veil, I didn't um, like set up and play Magician's Navigation, and because I drew Secrets of Dark Magic, I didn't have to save it. I didn't make a choice to draw it. Like I didn't have to discard something or like play Graceful Charity and like draw 3 cards and then choose which card I discarded. That sort of thing. Because there's less decision making, it feels like the victory is less earned to some people.
Yeah,
Chrome, is that
and
well, Chrome, is that kind of a better? Is that what you're saying?
It's part of it, but it is also I also tag onto that is it's an autopilot that you cannot interact with your opponent for a little bit of it. You
um,
can interact with the results of it, but you cannot interact with the process, and it feels like you're watching someone play when the skill does multiple things per turn, where even if you have a full board, you're not able to do anything about it.
Okay, the fact that skills don't start chains is something else that we're going to talk about, but that's going to be a
yeah,
little bit later.
I
Yeah,
think that's another issue. But my retort to the oh, it feels like it linearizes the plays. That could you not then consider skills as the one card combo, like the one card combo starter that many modern decks have, and quite a few old decks do not have, to where they require 2 or 3 cards to combo off. These skills are kind of they're like inserting that one card combo to make them more modern. And I just feel that the same argument that you make, Seraphi. I think that can be applied for the really powerful modern day one combo cards as well. Like they almost act like skills, except that sometimes they're on legs. You normal summon this card and then it does everything the archetype needs.
You are correct, but at the same
Yeah,
time, a lot of
I'm
Duel
just
Links
seeing
players.
similarities.
You're right, but here's the thing: a lot of Duel Links players could play Master Duel and they choose not to for that reason.
yeah, that
I
that will
I know,
be
and my thought there is that Master Duel, it has some decks that have their one card combos, and then Duel Links has different decks that have their one
yeah.
card combos via their skills.
My retort to that is more of a thing of Duel Links is a different format than modern
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh. Yeah,
Mhm.
and the thing that drew me to Duel Links at first, like several formats ago, is that it felt different than modern Yu-Gi-Oh.
Mm.
And one of my worries with the direction I see skills in, uh, is it's slowly turning Duel Links into a different flavor of modern Yu-Gi-Oh,
I think that's very correct. Yeah.
to the point where it's like, for me, it's starting to lose the reason to play Duel Links over Master Duel.
Okay, well here's
If
the.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
let me respond to that. Okay, so again, playing devil's advocate here. I haven't talked about my own opinion yet. I am simply responding to you guys for the audience. So
Hmm.
um, when you say something like that, the problem is that releasing cards is going to naturally progress the game into the modern format. We now have Tenyi, and Tenyi is able to. I don't know if you've seen them. They are able to just go off with no skill. They
Very
go
modern
off
deck.
and they are able to special summon usually Berserker with multiple protections in the graveyard, as well as Draco Berserker to give you an extra interaction. And they can still sometimes, not always, but sometimes they can still even set one after that.
And let's be honest, Tenyi, it doesn't need a skill. I
It
really
doesn't.
don't think it does.
Yeah, and it doesn't have one. I mean, arguably, arguably, we're going to see Tenyi take the new Avramax skill, which we're going to talk about. Have you guys seen the new Avramax skill?
I don't think I've analyzed it. All I know is that eventually Avramax, and that's scary.
Let me pull it up
Yeah.
so that you guys can take a look at it. Because
Okay.
you know we're going to talk about archive skills a little bit later, but because archive skills are like a very interesting part of this game, and that's kind of part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this to begin with. But you can use each of the following effects once per duel and only once per turn. If the sum of your link ratings on the field is 3 or more, gain 2,000 life points. So it's going to be basically a lesser version of the skill that gave them 3,000 life points when they summoned Berserker. And then on turn 5 and onwards, return 4 link monsters in your graveyard to the extra deck to add 1 Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax to your extra deck from outside your deck.
So it's recycling and Avramax.
Yes.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah. So what you do, but okay. So because it recycles, it also is only for link decks. Like Avramax doesn't require link monsters; it requires extra deck monsters. But you have to have it. You have to. Okay. Let's analyze this real quick. So it's turn 5, which means that you've already
Yeah.
played 2 turns, and you have to have 4 link monsters in your graveyard, which means that half of your extra deck at least has to be dedicated to link summoning. But then in addition to that, you also have to have enough resources after playing 2 turns or more to make a link 4
Yeah.
for this to be
This
beneficial.
This is the kind of skill design that I do not mind. There's a lot of things I like about the skill design.
Mhm.
First off, once per turn, once per duel. It is not a skill you're going to be using multiple times a duel every single turn. You have to be tactical about when you're going to use these effects. Like you said, like maybe having the links in the graveyard is more beneficial to you in turn 5 than using this and then just getting the Arva Max in the extra deck and not being able to pull it out. That and the other thing is, like you said, it spends so many resources, so many. Um, you have to play around the skill so much that Avramax feels like a payoff, not a step in the ladder, not something you can just do.
Yeah, and it doesn't give you any steps, right? It's you have to. You're right. You have to basically. They say, okay, here we're going to give you the link monsters back so that you can at the very least climb back into Avramax. But now do it,
Yeah, like
and there's no help there.
there is, like I said, like there is no interactivity with the skill itself. You cannot stop the opponent from returning the link monster to the extra deck, but there's a lot of things you can do before then,
Mhm.
and a lot of things you can do after it to stop Avramax from coming out.
And to talk about your point earlier about how it's not the same as a card, skills are very weird, and the ability to return 4 monsters in your graveyard to the extra deck doesn't start a chain, and it also can't be negated by cards like Necro Valley. Like even if there is an explicit card on the field that says you cannot move cards from out of your graveyard to anywhere else, you still have the ability to do this, and
Yeah,
that part really irks me. And
much like spell speed 4 is like a fan term. I think skills could be considered a spell speed 5 almost.
yeah, yeah, and we'll talk about the fact that skills don't start chains later, but I really dislike sealed tombs for this reason. I really
Mhm.
dislike the fact that a skill prevents me from banishing cards from the graveyard, um, and there's nothing that I can do about it.
Yeah, and again, the thing you have to, it's not not that even they don't start chains. Skills are not considered cards,
Mhm.
and most cards explicitly say negate a card effect.
Mhm.
There is no thing that says negate a skill
Right.
or
Well,
something.
I mean, there is a skill that does that, but we're not getting it.
Yeah,
Um,
but like running up like this type of skill, for example, I don't mind. And while I know that power creep is a factor with card releases and everything, there's still a point to be made that you could make by limiting certain cards from releasing by releasing certain cards earlier. A good example of that is, for example, Yubel was competitive in Duel Links once upon a time because they released the cards with certain timing.
Okay, hold on, hold on.
Was
We're
yeah.
getting a little bit to your response. I want to give Harmac a chance to talk
Okay,
about
okay.
the skill.
Yeah, okay. I think you guys have touched on most of the points. Turn 5 makes me a lot less scared of it, even though I'm scared of the card Avramax.
Mhm.
You've all been saying that it takes a lot of resources to, of course, you have to get all that stuff in the graveyard, and then after that, you'll have to build up into it. I kind of feel that, the future Link decks, and we're starting to see it. I think Tenyi locked itself into Worms, maybe, or it might not work there.
Um,
And
I
there are
think
some other decks that lock themselves.
I think Tenyi has one card that locks themselves into
Yeah,
worms, which is I think
but
it's Ashura. I think Ashura is the only card that locks you into worms. Yes.
regardless, I think something like, of course, we know Crusadia and we know Salamangrates. They can honestly make all the way up to a Link 4 and then kind of still start again to get there. I wouldn't say it's going to be too far off from seeing future Link based decks that would easily be able to fill the requirement.
Hmm.
And as you mentioned, yeah, there are um, interactions, but I don't think that's going to be too hard for the decks that this is kind of built for later on. It's just that it starts so far into the duel that makes it not so threatening. However, there's still a reason to play it for the life points.
Mhm.
And as mentioned, those link decks are already powerful enough to where they almost don't need extra help like the life points or this Avramax. But
Well,
I think it's a very interesting way, and it's a bit like Photon Lord and how they've attached a creature to a skill.
mhm.
But I don't know whether we would prefer that to just be in the game as a card. Maybe it's better that it's in a skill and it's hard to access because it is a very
I do
powerful
know.
card.
I do not want Avramax in this game.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh yeah,
um, no, but
that
yeah,
that for example.
I don't care that Crusadia can make it pretty easily because this is a Crusadia card. Like I like this for Crusadia. I do think that it's cool that we have this archive skill that kind of gives a boss monster to a fan loved deck, a deck that's really popular, but that didn't have an anime
Oh,
character.
that's fair. I'm just saying, decks like Crusadia, they're not bad. They're
Mm.
pretty decent. Like they should be better from this. Um, and
Also,
it might not just be Crusadia as well that gets it,
can
if you
War
get what I mean.
Chalice also kind of try and make this?
So the skill, if you're talking about which decks can play it, World Chalice. The problem with World Chalice is that they won't survive until turn 5.
Yeah.
But yes, World Chalice could definitely do this. Crusadia will do this if they give Mech Knights, and this may be an indication because it requires that you have a Link 3 on the field. If they give Mech Knights Spectrum Supreme, which is basically the only card that Mech Knights are missing except for Gearsu, then and Spectrum Supreme could be in the box. If they give Mech Knight Spectrum Supreme, Mech Knights could play this, and then
Yikes.
Salads.
Salads well, yes, this could be a game winner for Salads, but Salads have Burning Roar, and Burning Roar is probably better than this because it's instead of being 3 effects with a bonus, it's ties that bind with a bonus, and ties that bind synergizes a lot more with Salamangreat.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
the deck that I think is going to use this the most is actually Altergeist.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think that the people are complaining that the Altergeist skills are really bad, and I'm just like, yeah, but they want to make Avramax anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I'm also personally glad that I Orcust has been nerfed before Avramax is being hinted at.
I actually think that Orcust would probably struggle to make this, um, because they just don't have that many Link monsters. Um,
I think
I
they
don't
have
I
the
don't find that to be
one.
true.
They
I guess
have.
they can. I guess they can make Phoenix,
They already
but
make their own Link 4 pretty easily.
Yeah.
they
I think
no, they don't. I mean, they can, but that card is very unpopular. No one
yeah.
plays that card.
No, that's
It,
because that's just the bad Link 4, but I'm just saying they can make it if they want to.
Mhm.
yeah. If they wanted to use the first life point game, for example, they could just make the Link 4.
Yeah, like I'm just saying I'm glad that Orcust will probably remain nerfed until this skills
Hmm.
gets released.
Yeah.
And just saying, like, getting back to my response from earlier, like,
Yep.
this type of card release into the game for me is a way to combat power creep, because Evermax is a problem card. It's not just really powerful; it's a problem card for the format as it is right now. but tying it to a skill that has requirements is a good way to release the card, allow people to use it, but also limit its power without putting in a ban list. It's like a
So
good balance.
using a skill as a form of nerfing potential.
Yeah, that I like releasing things ahead of schedule. Like I said before with the example of Ubel. Uh, Ubel was never played in the DCG. Like it was a bad 3 card set, but when they released in Duel Links, it was alongside Fire Kings. I always forget the name of the deck.
Fire King Island.
Uh,
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. Vikings.
Fire Kings, who could easily make Ubel, and so the card saw some uh,
It was meta for a bit.
some meta representation. Yeah, something that had never happened in the TCG, and that is the appeal for me, or was the appeal of Duel Links. It's not only that different cards are being meta, they're being meta in a way that was never they were never able to be in the actual TCG. So you can give certain monsters their time to shine in a real card game outside of the anime. But now, with the way, firstly, I think, and I talked about this before, I think they're releasing cards at an increased rate. Like Duel Links started off as a way to recoup old players, and I think that the game as is, with the skill and the card pool, has lost that appeal completely. Like if you're
I
starting with
I
Duel
do.
Links, you have to learn the whole game basically.
Yeah, this going into the topic of Duel Links eventually modernizing. I think, as a famous individual once said, it was inevitable. It was going to happen. They would actually just have to halt introducing cards into the format to kind of keep it in this old state. And I think the
Well,
only
they are
way
going to
to
do
ever
that
really,
though, because we're only getting one speed
yeah,
duel box per 2 months from now on.
yeah, think they are going to slow it down. Um, but it was always going to reach a more modernized state,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and perhaps the only way to maybe reach that would be perhaps somehow to build good formats with old old Duel Links decks. But I don't know if we'll ever see that happen.
All right.
I
Well,
think that
before we continue, now that Chrome has brought up Ubel, it's time for me to crush Chrome streams. So,
Oh,
let's see.
delightful.
So let's talk about the. If you want to talk about autopilots, let's talk about the new Ubel skill.
yeah, this is another. Although I'm a Yubel fanboy, allegedly, they're my favorite character in the entirety of the Yu-Gi-Oh lore. This skill can be a problem.
Yes. So during this duel, this is a leaked skill, so we do not know the full details of
Do we
this
know
skill.
if it's definitely guaranteed for players yet?
Yes, this is a player skill.
Okay.
So during this duel, you can normal summon or set Elemental Hero Neos and Ubel without tributing. If you receive damage from your opponent's card effect while your life points are at 2,000 or below, your opponent will lose life points equal to the amount of damage you took. That part of the skill is completely unnecessary. I have
Yes,
no
It's
idea why
kind of
that's
funny though, isn't
there.
it?
it is funny. I can just see because you have to have 2,000 points or below.
Yep,
So if you have 2,000, your opponent has 1,000, and you lose 1,000, you win.
yep. Anyway, each time you normal summon Elemental Hero Neos or Ubel monster, you can activate one of these effects. This is each time you summon. So you get to choose one or the other, but it is not once per turn. So you can send a Ubel that was normal flip summon this turn to the graveyard to set Ubel Terror Incarnate to your field from the deck. If you control a Ubel Terror Incarnate that was normal flip summon this turn, you can instead set one Ubel the Ultimate Nightmare to your field from outside the deck. So what you can do in one turn is you can normal summon Ubel without tributing, activate the skill, send Ubel, set Terror Incarnate, flip summon Terror Incarnate, activate the skill, send Terror Incarnate, flip summon Ubel the Ultimate Nightmare, set Ultimate Nightmare, flip summon Ultimate Nightmare, activate the skill again, and this time you get to add Miracle Contact from outside your deck to your hand, or you could draw Elemental Hero Neos or Super Polymerization. So, um, and it allows you to set Yubel Terror Incarnate and Yubel the Ultimate Nightmare from outside the deck, which means you don't need to run these cards anymore. So you can
Blimey.
normal summon Yubel for free, and then you can rank it up into Ultimate Nightmare, not only without running Ultimate Nightmare in your deck, which is a massive brick, but also you don't need to destroy it anymore, which means you have far fewer resources that you need to expend to get Ultimate Nightmare on your field. And I mean, really, Ultimate Nightmare is a terrifying card.
Have you gone? Has this gone minus in any way, or have we only technically gone plus by doing all of this?
Just plus.
Just plus.
Wow.
Now,
It's just lusting.
Yubel the Ultimate Nightmare, for those of you that don't know, it's a level 12 fiend. This card cannot be destroyed by battle. You take no battle damage from battles involving this card. At the end of the damage step, if this face-up attack position card battles an opponent's monster, you can attack or you can be attacked. Inflict damage equal to that monster's attack to your opponent. Also destroy that monster. That is mandatory, by the way. And this effect has not been halved. This card is already in Duel Links. This is burn damage that has not been halved, and you basically just Ring of Destruction. One-sided Ring of Destruction on any monster. So you attack into Blue Eyes, your opponent takes 3,000, Blue Eyes is gone. For a normal summon. And you also drew Miracle Contact.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy and insane that you can get all the way up to that card. I would argue that the Yubel boss monster, while scary in combat, outside of combat is not too scary. I think what's crazy is that you get to do all that, and then also add the miracle spell, and also did you say super polymerization?
Yes. So add Miracle Contact from outside your deck. You have to have Neos or Super Poly in your deck though. So
also, a small reminder: if you're going first, you can use these effects. You could also just stop in the middle step of Terror Incarnate.
Yes, and Terror Incarnate can't be destroyed by battle. You take no battle damage from battles involving this card. Before damage calculation, when this face-up attack position card is attacked, burn your opponent equal to that monster's attack, and then during your end phase, destroy all other monsters on the field. So Terror Incarnate.
Sometimes it can be considered that the second phase is perhaps a bit more strong than the first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could, for example, if you're eyeing a little bit of a brick, or you can end on Terror Incarnate, and they'll have to interact with it. If you have any negates left on the field, it's arguable if you want to go all the way or to the second step. Mm-hmm. Either way, I think the skill is problematic in design.
Hold on, we're not done talking about the skill yet. So, so let's talk about Miracle Contact. We'll talk about the implications after we understand everything. So, Miracle Contact. Shuffle into the deck from your hand, field, or graveyard the fusion materials that are listed on an Elemental Hero fusion monster that lists Elemental Hero Neos' fusion material. Then special summon that fusion monster from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. So, you send Yubel to the graveyard. So Yubel is already in your graveyard. Then you draw Miracle Contact from outside your deck. So you don't need to run it. It's an extra free card, like I talked about with the fusion monsters getting their own extra benefit. And what card are we summoning? We are going to be summoning Elemental Hero Neos Kluger, which requires Elemental Hero Neos and Yubel. This is a spellcaster for some reason, even though it is a fusion of a warrior and a fiend. Before damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack. That will probably be halved because that card is not in the game yet. If this face-up card is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, leaves the field, so it can be returned to the returned to the extra deck, banished, destroyed, sent to the graveyard with Dingirsu, whatever. You can special summon one Neos Wiseman from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. And what is Neos Wiseman? It is basically the same card. It's 3,000 attack, 3,000 defense. This card cannot be destroyed by card effects. At the end of the damage step, if this card battled an opponent's monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack of the monster that battled, and you gain life points equal to that monster's defense. This card is already in the game. Its effect is not halved. So again, most of the burn damage in this deck is not halved.
It's I can imagine if there are problems with the deck, I don't think it's out of Konami's decision that to actually change cards to become half damage. I could see them doing that in the future, but I'm just trying to figure out how this all works. So it doesn't search out Yubel. and it doesn't search out Neos. So you'll need to run the various ways of searching those
Yeah,
cards.
you could,
Well,
for
you
example,
can
run.
search Neos if you summon Ubel.
Okay,
And
thank you.
you can run 3 of the base Ubel,
Hmm.
because if I understand correctly, let me see. Okay, you need to run the base Ubel and the second form. You do not need to run
You
the
do not
last
need to run
form.
a second form.
You do not need to run the second either.
No.
From your feet, or okay, so you just need to
Outside.
run 3 base Ubel.
Three
Yeah.
Ubels and at least one Neos, uh I will add that again, this is a leak, so we do not know the full text of the skill. But as data mined so far, there are no restrictions to your deck.
So perhaps decks that do not require a normal summon could in fact play this.
Yes.
Crikey.
All right,
So
now
basically, if you have one Ubel in your hand, you have full combo, and you're gonna end up with possibly in your field a Ultimate Nightmare and Neos Kruger,
Hmm.
and then
or the Ultimate Nightmare and a Super Poly plus something else. Maybe you have more cards in your hand because you only used one.
yes, and then
3 other
there's
cards in your hand.
you will have 3 other cards in your hand. And it's important to note that we have in the game, which we recently got at 3, Summoner's Art, which
Yeah.
allows you to
So
draw Neos.
Neos is easily searchable.
So you can run 3 Stratos and 3 Summoner's Arts.
Also, oh yeah, oh Jesus, it's free.
It is free. Yes. Also, I will note, it was ages ago. It was ages. I think it was back in December, but there was a leak back in I believe December of 2022 that emergency call got
Oh
added
yeah.
to the game, and we have not seen this card yet. They very rarely release hero support in ones. It's usually like 2 or 3 cards. So if Kluger is going to be in the box, it is entirely possible that we are getting emergency call as maybe a limit 3.
Okay.
Still, this is what we were talking about before. This exemplifies exactly my issue with skills.
Mhm.
It's not only autopiloting the deck, it's not only boosting consistency to a point where it's honestly ridiculous. Uh, it is also doing so in a manner that even if this deck is going second, there's little the opponent can do to stop you.
Mhm.
Apart from that, they have to flip up the monster.
Yes, that
You
that
have
is
to
an
flip up
interaction.
the
That's
monster.
why they made it a set, I
Mhm.
think.
That's correct.
You just have to flip up the monster, like. But from the skill itself, they cannot stop any of the searches. They technically, if they can stop a normal summon, they can stop the normal summon. And I agree with Seraphi. The uh, life points at 2k or below is completely unnecessary.
It's weird that, yeah. It's
Yeah.
just like that's actually probably the most forgettable part of the skill, but it can catch people off guard because of that.
I have to
Um,
think
assume this has something to do with like Jaden's last duel against Darkness that I
oh
have no
yeah,
idea.
could
it's
be
been a while.
something about it. I think it's also because if you look at Ubel, Niels Kruger, Niels Wiseman, it's very well disguised, if you want to say it that way. But the win condition of this deck is burn.
That is not disguised. That is the entire point of the deck.
Yeah, no, but it's just like you're burning the opponent a lot. So I think it's just like an extra burn tool.
But
Because
like you have to get to the battle phase to do that though, and
for
um,
example, if you run Ring of Destruction, if you're in 2k life points or below, you're gonna burn your opponent twice, if I understand correctly. Because
No, it's your
both
opponent's card effect.
ah,
yeah.
If you
Oh, your
receive damage
opponent's
from
card
your
effect.
opponent's
Okay.
yeah,
So
but
basically,
I think
yeah.
the only reason like this skill has the fact that it reflects damage just means that we're gonna get more draws in the mirror, which is weird. I don't know why they would add a clause that basically encourages draws.
yeah, and I think Konami usually has a quite the issue with draws.
They
They've
do.
Yeah.
gotten rid of cards just because it
They
makes the
they
games draws.
they
So this
absolutely hate draws. So I don't
could, yeah,
understand
this
this.
might bite them in the butt a bit. I think.
I think that this can be easily fixed not to be a draw to make you lose the life points first.
Okay, that's fair. Um,
Well,
You
it's
just
not added yet, so they haven't thought about that. I don't think.
actually, wait, no. You know
Is
what?
it?
I think it is phrased that way. If you receive damage from your opponent's card effect, your opponent will lose life points equal to the damage you took. Yeah, it does. It okay. It sounds like you take the damage
Okay, so
first
it
already.
won't be draws. Got you.
Yeah.
Yes. So there won't be draws, but still, the other thing that this skill generates is I'm imagining the possibility of this becoming meta, right?
Hmm. Well, it's
So
gonna be meta, yes.
going first against a Jaden, uh,
Yeah. What do
you
we
don't want
have to
to.
contend with?
Yeah,
To
you
get you
don't
have to
want to
contend
be.
with super polymerization. That's what you have to contend with.
Yeah,
Going
but
first against super polymerization is the worst.
not only that, you do. For example, a BLS deck, you better not summon your big guys.
Hmm.
Like you don't, because if you put 3k bodies on the field, you're giving free damage to your opponent
Yep.
through Wiseman, through Kruger, through because again, Kruger crashes perfectly, goes to the graveyard, brings Wiseman, attacks again, and you're losing damage on each attack.
Well, one thing they don't
you're not gonna
they don't try
attack
and
with
remove it
Kruger. You're
otherwise.
gonna attack with Ultimate Nightmare.
You're gonna attack with Ultimate Nightmare, but if it's not enough to end the duel, you can just go for Kruger later.
Yep.
Is what I'm saying. It is just it creates an environment where just seeing a Jaden on ladder means I cannot go all out. I cannot play my deck because if I do, I'm gonna get mega punished.
All right. So there's 2 points that I want to make here. First, to answer. Well, actually, this will be shorter. So first, if there is no deck restriction on this deck, then at some point when Yuri gets released, we are going to get Starving Venom Fusion Dragon.
Yeah.
And a searchable Starving Venom Fusion Dragon in a hero deck with no restrictions is awful. Especially if they're already running Yubel. They already have Dark Monsters. I don't know what we're going to do with that, because Yuri plays Super Polymerization, which
Yeah,
makes it
it's gonna be
so
funny how that
awkward.
works with it.
I have to imagine that Konami is going to release Starving Venom Fusion Dragon at limit 1, and then give Yuri a skill where he can play Starving like Super Polymerization and Starving Venom Fusion Dragon in the same deck, and that's like the only way we're going to be able to do it. And
What's
it's
the
going to
other
be like
skill that?
what?
What's the other skill that searches super polymerization? By the way, I just want to like have that in comparison to this one.
There
Because
is
we
an
have a Jaden.
there is another yes, there is another skill that does that. Hold on.
Yeah, let's look that up real quick.
Sure,
Because I believe at one point you had to go -1 to get it, and then they changed that.
that's correct. So during this duel, you can normal summon or set elemental hero Neos without tributing. Also, once per duel, the following effect can be used during the turn you have normal summoned elemental hero Neos. Add 1 super polymerization from your deck, or 1 polymerization, miracle conduct, or miracle fusion from outside your deck to your hand. Then send.
So we do already have a deck that can search super poly. It's more restricted, which is why it should mostly be playing elemental heroes. But elemental heroes also work with super poly because they have like one for most elements.
Yes, but at the same time, it requires you to go minus. So, because you are locked into playing nothing but heroes in the extra deck, you can't play cards like Mud Dragon of the Swamp or Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, where you use Super Poly to take both of your opponent's cards, unless they're also playing heroes.
So I'm just trying to compare to how that's different in the Ubel version.
The Bell version doesn't have any restrictions on the deck.
Yeah.
So
that's
far
fair.
that we know of, your extra deck can be anything with a U-Bill version.
Yeah, and of course the bigger problem is that you can summon Ubel.
I just like you guys keep mentioning, oh, they can summon Ubel, and apart from I think that fusion floating into another card that's borderline the same card, in which case you basically have to remove it twice.
Which
I
also
just don't.
floats into yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't find like the card itself, Ubel itself, scary. It's like, I only find Warrock scary in the battle phase, and that same goes for this card.
I mean,
Is my point.
cards that can't be destroyed in battle are definitely a problem. And Terror Incarnate, well, Terror Incarnate floats, but if you're not playing, if the skill is encouraging you not to play Ultimate Nightmare, then I guess it wouldn't float.
Maybe you might play one amount of it, but it's we've had to deal with Dingirsu, and that means we've actually been using a lot of non-destruction already. And so, like, when I look at the skill, I'm kind of just more scared of the super poly aspect or the miracle contact aspect.
Terror Incarnate's effect triggers when it leaves the field, not when it's destroyed.
Okay, but like I'm just saying the other forms of Yubel, you know.
Right,
Um,
but we were talking
just
about making Terror Incarnate on turn 1. So if you make Terror Incarnate on turn 1 and you have Ultimate Nightmare in your deck, then if your opponent removes Terror Incarnate, you just summon Ultimate Nightmare, and then they have to
Okay, so
use
yeah,
another,
you would play one nightmare in the deck then.
possibly.
Is the plan? Okay.
possibly. I think you definitely would play 3 of the base form,
Yeah, you definitely play 3 of this.
and maybe one of each of the other two, just so you have some way of uh bouncing back. Let's say if you get stuck with Terror Incarnate, for example, or if you get stuck on any of the other steps.
Yeah, so if your opponent does something like, let's say they Malevolent Sin this, they can attack you directly. You just summon, you belt the Ultimate Nightmare. And then they have to get through Ultimate Nightmare, which also can't be destroyed by battle. So the question is, how many times can you remove a card that can't be removed? While also getting
I'd
through
say a
a
few
fusion,
times.
while also getting through a fusion monster that floats.
Also,
Yeah.
the thing that's makes it scary for me, it's not that you can summon Ubel and Kruger alone.
Mhm.
Is that you can summon Ubel and Kruger and you still have 3 cards in your hand.
And that's where I was getting to with the other thing. So the reason why this skill is scary, the reason why the BLS skill is so effective, is because you have so few cards. Not only do you not need to run cards in your hand, the cards are coming to your deck from outside your deck, which means that the rest of your deck can be essentially um, protection and removal. So the reason
Yeah.
why Speedroids was meta is not because they could mill a card. It was not because they could summon um, Crystal Wing for free. It was not because they could summon Kite Drake and then kill the opponent during the opponent's turn. The reason why Speedroids was meta was because they could easily play 3 copies of Forbidden Lance with no drawback.
Yeah, that's and again, if this is gearing more towards a burn control, they can be playing Ice Dragon's Prison. They can
Mm-hmm.
be playing Crackdown. They can be
Mm-hmm.
playing all the limit 3 traps.
That is correct. The opponent can so when you have the reason why BLS is tier 1 right now is because um, it's not because you can summon a bunch of BLS cards. That is the least relevant aspect of the skill. It is because you have your ritual materials in your graveyard. And because you are restricted from summoning from your extra deck, the most popular version of BLS plays Magistus, which basically treats their extra deck like another hand. So you have your extra deck as your hand, you have your graveyard as your hand, which means that the rest of your deck is just back row. So you will see BLS players with like 12 traps. Book of Moon, Ice Dragon's Prison, Compulse, maybe Cosmic Cyclone, Forbidden Lance. They will play everything they can to remove warning points, maybe Lost Wind, whatever they want. And the reason why they are able to set 2 or 3 cards is not because they drew those cards. It's because they can play the rest of their deck without any cards in their hand. So in the same way that in the modern game, a 1 card combo allows you to run 10 hand traps, in Duel Links, a 1 card combo allows you to run 12 back row. And
Okay. So yeah, to paint the whole picture, in the end, it's another skill that shall enable a huge back row deck.
exactly.
Yep,
Gotcha.
Yeah,
a
and
huge
that's
back row deck that you cannot attack into.
mhm,
So there was we had Destiny Hero,
mhm,
we had Rocket,
mhm.
um we've, as you mentioned, Blackluster Soldier, and now this is coming along as well.
And
Mhm.
Speedroids.
Speedroids. Okay.
So basically, it's like I said, it's kind of like mirroring the modern Yu-Gi-Oh dilemma of hand traps without the hand traps yet, just back row still.
Yeah,
But
and
we're getting
Time
there.
Lords, it was interesting. Time Lords, which is the deck that you would expect would be the most back row reliant, was actually kind of restricted with their skill from playing too much back row because the way that they got Infinite Light out, it required them to not have any other traps on their field.
Yeah, 2
So
zones.
exactly. So Time Lords, which is the stall burn deck that people were the most scared of running 12 back row, actually ended up running fewer back row than any other deck because their good trap card that allowed them to actually play the game just required so much space in their back row that they couldn't afford it. Very weird how that ended up happening.
Like this is what I mean when I am not happy with the direction of skill design is going towards. It's doing too much and leaving too much open for degeneracy, basically.
Well, let's talk about that. So, on the one hand, limit the more skills that are in the game that enable these one card combos, the more back row we will have to deal with. But at the same time, can these decks exist and function in any sort of playable way without being able to set 3?
I
Good
think
question.
I think for example, this skill, because here's the thing, when we are thinking of is the deck able to exist, there's a fine line where people are thinking of tournament results.
Mhm.
When Duel Links, in my opinion, should be geared more towards a ladder experience, because that's what 99% of the player base is going to experience. And in my opinion, nothing is going to run out because again, the objective of designing this game should always be bringing in new players. You want to keep your player base healthy and growing, and nothing is going to run out new players more than to having to learn the game with all the mechanics only to be run out by expensive macro.
Yeah, specifically back row that older players have accumulated across all the years with all the deals and all the gems that they've accumulated. I
Yeah,
can see that. I can see how that favors the prior players as opposed to the new upcoming ones.
Counterpoints. It gives you, as a new player, very safe and reliable staples to use your gems and your tickets on because you see that there are multiple decks that you can build that can use all these cards consistently.
if Duel Links
Oh, and
uh,
since we're on the
had
topic of back row, real quick, unlimit floodgate trap hole. It's way past its time to unlimit.
yeah.
Pendulum era has ended.
Yeah, we can release it safely. Uh, Also, I would agree with you, Seraphi, on the counterpoint. If obtaining cards in Duel Links was accessible without spending a lot of either time or money on it.
I understand, Seraphi, you're saying like with like the free tickets and the free amount of gems we get, but in my opinion, I don't think that comes at a high enough rate to where people would be comfortable and not just drop the game, like because of all
Yeah,
I
the older players with
agree,
all the back row.
but when we're
there
talking about
there's a
new players, so
mhm.
I will actually dismiss your argument outright, Chrome, because they have changed the app. New players get dropped into sevens now. They don't even
Ah,
see the real game unless they choose to. They are guided towards rush. They will play rush by proxy. They are guided to rush. They are taught rush to start with. They will be playing rush for the majority of the beginning of the game. And they will probably experience PvP first in rush. Konami has already new player proofed their game.
that is
Okay,
pretty smart.
that is smart. That is something I can agree with. And that also makes sense why these kind of skills are more geared towards the older audience now.
Yeah, I came prepared. I am ready to deal with all of your questions. Anyway,
So
okay,
is the
hold on,
general is the
hold
general?
on.
Sorry, go on.
I'm sorry. We are now over an hour into this. I want to make sure that we can actually get to all the points that we want to discuss. So we've talked about skills, um, and we've touched a little bit on the problems that skills have, some of the discussions, some of the some of the points, some of the counterpoints. Let's now move into the part where we talk about our unique opinions. Okay, because we have not explicitly stated those yet. I will go first. I'll let Khrome go second since Harmak went second last time, and then Harmak will
Sounds
go
good.
third. Okay? All right.
Hmm.
My opinion on skills is that skills exist to facilitate a version of the real game in a format that cannot sustain it. And the problem is entirely self-inflicted on Konami's part. Why do fusion decks have such a problem? Because we don't have 5 cards. Why do ritual decks have such a problem? Because we don't have 5 cards. Why is it that decks like Heroes and Ancient Gears that don't have interaction have to have these skills that allow them to run so much back row? Because we can't choose to go second. That is something Konami could change with the flip of a switch. If we could go second whenever we wanted, then the decks that don't have inherent interaction, like Blackwings, like Red Dragon Archfiend, could just choose to go second. And then it would be a battle between these modern decks that have negates, that have traps, that have back row, and the decks that are more monster reliant, like fusion decks, which require more fusion monsters or fusion materials, and therefore cannot run as many removals, and don't have as many interactions to try and OTK through. If my hero deck could go second, I would just base it entirely around Vision Hero Trinity, because Vision Hero Trinity has 5,000 attack points. Its ability to increase its attack points is not an activated effect, therefore it can't be negated by something like a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Then I have 5,000 attack points, I crash into all my opponent's monsters, I OTK them that way, and the rest of my deck can be protection, like, you know, Lance or Cosmic, and I don't have to worry about cards like Book of Moon and Compulse because I'm trying to kill my opponent on turn 2. And if I fail to do that, my opponent going turn 1 wins. And that sort of interaction is the true Yu-Gi-Oh experience. The fact that we can't choose to go first, the fact that we have to start with 4 cards in our hand, is ruining a legitimate experience in what would otherwise be an enjoyable slow drip format. And they could legitimately, they could raise the life point total, they could raise the number of cards in our hand, they could give us more cards in the extra deck. They impose all these restrictions arbitrarily, and if they have to give us skills to get around this, like for example the Blue Eyes skill, the Ultimate Dragon skill, which not only unbricks Blue Eyes by giving them polymerization, it also adds 3 cards to the extra deck. Why? Because Blue Eyes can't handle all of the different fusions it needs to run in an 8 card extra deck, or I think it was 6 cards when they released DSOD. So it's Konami has rules for their game. They change those rules for Duel Links. Then they find, surprise, surprise, the cards don't work when you change the rules. All the cards that they've had to nerf because of the life point loss, all the cards they can't add to the game because there's no main phase 2. Um, uh, magical muskets suck because they can't give us Crooked Crown. Not because Crooked Crown letting you special summon during your opponent's turn would be broken, but because when you special summon, it locks a zone out for your opponent, and that's too powerful in a 3 card format. And because Crooked Crown is not in the game, the Zakiel, which can't special summon itself and can only tribute summon itself with 1 tribute, which is ridiculously unreliable, is a rare. The boss of the deck is a rare because they can't give us the card that the deck needs to summon it, so it's worthless. And that's what skills try and fix. And when you're patching a hole that you drilled yourself, I don't have any sympathy for you. Crum?
Okay, I agree with the sentiment. The only thing I'm going to disagree with you is that the rules were not arbitrary. They were made so because at a conceptual level, both Duel Links and Speed Duels, like I said before, were going for the emulation of the anime. They gave us 4,000 life points because the anime had it. They allow us to play character deck skills because some of the plays done in the anime are incredibly hard and not to say impossible to do in the actual game. So conceptually, they were starting from a rough point because the anime is a storytelling medium, and no game is going to be able to replicate what we see in the show one for one with the rules that they established. I agree that skills try to fix the game, but again, for me, they've tried to go towards a more nostalgia pandering than like more gameplay balance sense. My personal opinion is that with that in mind, what we're seeing now is a deviation from what the original intent of the game. I think it's creating an unhealthy environment for new players. Like I said before, even if new players start with Rush, entering speed duels in Duel Links right now is a nightmare. Like I do not want to know. Like you're playing Rush, it's like, oh, maybe I'm gonna try speed duels now. I would not recommend a new player to start investing money or time in speed duels immediately, unless they're really into the original card game. And that is going to create a larger issue that we are already seeing in the other formats of Yu-Gi-Oh! There has been already a meeting at Konami that Master Duel is not turning up new players. People are not buying new cardboard from the online game. And even the player base for Master Duel is older players, people who already played the game. The same thing is going to happen to Duel Links because of this skill design that's going around, where we're seeing buffs to uninteractable, uh, essentially one card combos that allow the rest of the deck to be a degenerate pile of very expensive, very destructive back row. And it's turning the meta, the experience of playing Duel Links, into something a little bit unhealthy, if you ask me. So I think skills and the game, even with 4 cards, could work, but I do not like the direction we are taking right now. I do not like that we're seeing how skills allow decks to be built in a way that will essentially push people away from formats. Instead of like, if you want to ask for a good example, instead of me criticizing what's going on right now, some metas people were especially happy with were when Black Rose was meta and when Mech Lords were meta. Decks helped by uh, good, well-timed releases for the deck and helpful skills that did not do too much, in my opinion, but just enough to push the deck towards a playable area where it's not frustrating to play against. Now skills are doing way too much and it's starting to get frustrating. Is my opinion of the Savage pattern right now. Harmak, if you want to take it away.
Okay. So after this huge discussion with you, I have reflected and I have seen that there are more back row decks coming into the meta, partially facilitated by very powerful skills. I don't exactly like the idea of too many decks becoming like that. And that does make me worry. But in terms of how close Duel Links or Speed Duel are compared to the main game, I don't necessarily believe that the skills were implemented to band-aid the extra card required or to band-aid the life disparity. I instead believe that they were implemented, at least the archetype specific skill, to make some basically a portion of the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, specifically as we mentioned, nostalgia pandering, to make those decks more playable and probably playable till the end of time. And I don't necessarily agree with that as a good purpose. I would personally prefer if the purpose of it was more just aiming at the lower power deck level decks in general and bringing them up. And they don't necessarily have to be linked to the anime. I understand that that's a lot of reason why people play Duel Links. But it would be awesome if, let's say, Gravekeeper's got a skill or etc. I also don't think that adding an extra card and increasing our life points up to 8,000, I don't think those have to be mutually exclusive from skills, because I think skills can just add another element. Of course, this other element can be corrupted and it can be misused and misbalanced, and that's quite a bit of what we're seeing currently. But I do think it has the potential for good. I don't think it just has to be a band-aid fix for what I consider as the format.
I agree with that.
Um,
I
but
think that if but here's the thing, right?
Go
I think that if Konami changed the format and they allowed us to have 5 cards, they allowed us to have maybe 6,000 life points like Rush does, and they allowed us to have a larger extra deck, that the skills that they gave us could be more focused on creating the explosive situations that Chrome is describing, as opposed to um, basically fixing the problems that you have with the requirements. So, if Konami's goal, like you say, is to try and make anime decks more playable, they could, for example, allow you to draw cards from your deck. And they do that. That like the Hero Alliance skill lets you draw super polymerization from your deck. The Blue Eyes skill that we're getting will allow you to draw Monster Reborn from your deck. But the difference between those skills and a skill like the BLS skill is you have to be running those cards, which means sometimes you brick. It means sometimes you don't need the skill because you drew the card already, and it also means that there are fewer spots left in your deck for cards that are unrelated to your strategy. So the more the more cards that you add from outside your deck to your hand with a skill like this one that adds miracle contact from outside your deck to your hand, the fewer cards you have to run in your deck, the more cards you can use for things like card draw or things like um, trap cards. Like when I was playing the BLS skill, I played Pot of Dichotomy, which you thought was really interesting. You commented on that, and the reason that I can play Pot of Dichotomy in BLS is because you have so many types that start in the graveyard, which I thought was really fun. I was excited to play Pot of Dichotomy for once because that card's been in the game forever. But honestly, um, Pot of Dichotomy in that way is just a +1. And is it really that healthy for a deck to be able to just run a +1, because of a skill? Yes, you have to give up your battle phase. You have to draw the Pot of Dichotomy, but it's not that big of a drawback for you to draw the Pot of Dichotomy when you have all these cards in your graveyard that act as your second hand. Essentially, Pot of Dichotomy is in there to just give you 2 traps instead of 1. And while that will make the deck better, it will make the deck succeed more, both on ladder and in tournaments. Is that what we want to promote? Is that healthy? Is that fun for both players?
I think the problem that's the thing. The goal of Konami when designing new cards is always to make money. That's why the power level keeps increasing. That's why um, everything keeps hiring the stakes, and we can get new archetypes that are really toxic. And the thing that is frustrating to me is that Duel Links didn't need to be designed that way because it has the nostalgia pandering goal of it, where you can make decks more fun and people will try to buy it because they remember from the childhood, it's tied to a character. Um, what I see now is an issue of they're making if they're making so that the money cards that you're spending a lot on, and that's the part that irks me more, are not those archetypal monsters, are not the cards that need that's the thing, they don't even need to reprint the nostalgia cards. If they printed it once, you just have to dig through an old box, spend your money on that. The cards that you spend money on are the cards that win you the game, the back row, the the limit 3 traps. That's what I think is making it unhealthy in general.
Well, yeah, I think this all adds to, as I was mentioning, um, I, part of the skill making process. Those who develop the skill, or at least the direction Konami is being in right now, it's kind of lost its way, or
Hmm.
perhaps maybe it had a groove at one point, and maybe it's losing. We're seeing, at least what we would describe as more skills making the same mistake. Um, but I just, as I was explaining with my viewing concept on skills, um, I think it makes the speed duel format unique. I think it's part of its identity, and it can be used properly. I think it can be
Hmm.
used for like a good purpose for the audience. It's just that we know that that doesn't really align with what makes the most. And yeah, so not exactly high hopes, not to be doomer, but not exactly high hopes that change for the positive.
Sorry about that.
It's fine. Yeah, not that high hopes that things will be changed positive, perhaps in the direction I prefer. That's just a general forecast on how I think it go.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down if the business model works, because
Oh wait, hold on.
with
I was on mute. That's why. Uh,
Ah,
Harmak, your mic is
go on.
cutting in and out.
I had to essentially turn down the input sensitivity
Mhm.
because I kept hearing people talking, like shouting above me. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you need me to repeat any of what I've gone through.
I don't think you need to repeat it, but for the audience, I would like to, if you could adjust maybe a little bit so that your
I've done it.
mic catches
I've
more.
gone back. Yeah, I've
Okay,
gone back to the original one that I started with now. But
fantastic.
I
All right,
don't know how the activity will be.
it's fine. It's
Um,
fine. We just want to hear
but
what you're saying without like skips. Okay,
that's
I'm
fair.
sorry. I'm sorry,
Apologies.
Chrome. Go ahead.
uh 1 second, because I lost my train of thought there. Um, what was I saying before?
I don't know. I kind of felt like we're starting to go in a bit of circles.
Yeah, we are.
Do we
Let's
have any
Could be,
others?
could
Do you
be.
have any sections that we want to go on to?
Yeah, let's move on. All right, so the next section is a more positive section. Let's talk about archive skills and the kind of benefits of this. So Konami, with the release of Sevens, has decided to create archive skills, and the idea of archive skills is A, you can have skills that aren't tied to a specific character, and B, you can have skills that everyone can use. So the immediate implication for me is finally, finally, they've released 100 characters now. Emma is the 100th character. That's why we're getting a celebration for Blue Eyes with her. They've released 100 characters. Every single one of those characters, including characters that were not in Tag Force, has been given a Destiny Draw line. Make Destiny Draw an archive skill so that everyone can use the cool Destiny Draw card line that they recorded.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
It's a
brilliant.
waste otherwise.
that's
I must
actually
say
really
I was
cool.
unaware that that these archive skills had been added, but that does sound really awesome.
Oh yeah,
I'm
let's
happy to hear
here,
that.
hold on. Let me pull it up and we'll discuss it. So the okay, so here are the rules of an archive skill. An archive skill is unlocked as a lifetime reward, and once you have the archive skill, you can put it on any character as long as they are in the format. So there are archive rush skills, which can only be used on rush characters, and there are archive speed skills that can only be used on speed characters. But that's why you can play Avramax in literally any deck, as long as you have at least 4 link monsters in the deck. And the other archive skill they're giving for speeds is can be used before your normal draw if your life point is lower than your opponent's, or if your opponent has 3 or more cards in their spawn trap zones. One of the cards from your normal draw this turn will be a mystical space typhoon in your deck.
When it says one of the cards, Does
That
that mean it will replace the one card, or is it just an extra card?
that is, I believe, they didn't use this language before they released Rush, but I think they've gone to changing that so that because Rush draws more than one card, it's not going
Ah,
to be there's no implication for speed rules, but I think this is how they're going to phrase draw sense cards from now on, draw sense skills from now on, because even in speed, because in Rush, if you draw like the draw sense Dion Keto skill, it draws Dion Keto and Seahorse Carrier, and it's just that it replaces two of the cards from the five that you draw with those two cards.
all
It's
right.
weird language, but it's because of
Just the
Rush.
languaging.
Yeah,
Got you.
but
I
this
think it's
skill
way
is
easier now
actually
to word it.
this second skill, the MST skill, it addresses a big concern that a lot of people had with the Clock of Destiny skill. A lot of people were concerned that the Clock of Destiny skill would be abused not for the 1 day of peace effect, which is ridiculous. I can't believe Konami added that, but but for the fact that you could just draw MST. You just draw MST and then use it as removal. Like, and fair, drawing MST is a very powerful effect, but giving it to every player and not tying it to like deck restrictions, like you have to play Destiny Heroes, means that people can, you know, if your deck doesn't require a skill, like a generic, we talked about generic skills earlier. If your deck
Mhm.
doesn't require a skill and you're worried about back row, you can put like 3 MSTs in your deck, but what if you don't draw it, right? This literally lets you draw an out. And the draw the out meme has become real. You can literally just choose to draw the out. And it does require you to have less life points than your opponent, but it also allows you to do it if your opponent has 3 or more cards in their spell and trap zones. And if that's the case, then yeah, that's the best time for you to draw MST.
It's
So
punishing your opponent for playing kind of greedily,
it
and that
is.
does also mean that you can, as the opponent, you can choose to play around this skill.
Yes, but you have to like you don't know if your opponent has the skill or not, which is kind of like
Hmm.
it's kind of the mind game. So I
Still,
I
I think
definitely like this skill.
yeah, and I think it's a way of playing around your opponent that I consider healthy. It's not like, oh, I cannot uh, play all my good monsters because they might just, I don't know, you bell me and you win the game immediately. No, this is, I don't want to be greedy and set all of my traps because then I'm going to give my opponent the ability to destroy one.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Exactly.
So
And
it's
go
I
ahead.
think it's a healthier way of mind game your opponent.
Mhm. And then Harmac, the other implication, which you probably aren't aware of, is this the first time this was used was to give us a skill for Noodle Ninjas because they're not going to give us Sabu Ramen as a character. So for the decks for anime decks where we're not getting the character, we can still get skills for the cards. So for example, one of the characters who is very popular that I believe we are not going to get simply because all of his cards are already in the game is Shinji from Arc 5.
Yes.
Um, he Battle Wasps are a cool deck. They are pretty bad. They would really benefit from having some kind of skill, and the fact that we already have literally every Battle Wasp in the game is a pretty safe indication that we're not getting Shinji as a character. So they could release a Battle Wasp skill, and you could play Battle Wasps on Yusei or on Crow, and you could be rewarded for that. And I'm sure that a lot of people would like to stop playing Battle Wasps on Weevil because he's the only one with an insect skill.
Definitely. Oh my lord.
And
That.
adding to that, as a Gravekeeper player here,
Mhm.
please.
Yes, yes, we do not
Gravekeepers did appear in the anime, didn't they? So yeah, there is hope there.
we do not need a skill that searches Necro Valley, but something
No,
else.
we don't need because we're technically. I'm just going to correct one thing. They did appear in the anime in GX with one off character.
Yes,
Gatekeeper's chief is a
And
duelist.
and that's a good example of a character who won't be added.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
they will never add. If they add even me, the Gravekeeper guy, if they're gonna add one of duelists, add the tennis guy. His deck was fun.
Mhm.
Um, not Gravekeepers, but even then, like Gravekeepers is in a very similar situation as Battle Wasps because we have every single Gravekeeper card except Royal Tribute, which even I'm saying don't,
yeah,
Mhm.
nah.
don't, because that is the most toxic shit you could release into this game.
Yes.
Um, But Gravekeepers, for example, could have an archive skill, and it fits because you could use it with any of the Ishtar brothers. You
Oh,
could use it with Ishizu, you can use it with Marek, you can use it with Odeon if you wanted to, because they're all in that. You can use it Bakura, because technically he's also represented there.
hold on, real quick.
And see a lovely
Oh, yep.
funny meme.
Chrome opening
Yes.
Duel Links after Royal Tribute is released.
Oh
Okay,
no, he's
all
gonna
right.
get trolled.
But yeah, we do not need, for example, more ways to bring Necrovalley into the hand. We already have that, plenty of those. But more normal summons would be nice.
Mhm.
Or a way of swapping Gravekeepers in your hand will be nice.
I
Something
think
like
also
that, I don't know.
perhaps some way of giving Gravekeepers more of a payoff other than just Necro Valley.
Yep.
Maybe.
Well,
Yeah,
I
sadly,
want to really quickly interject and because before the joke, guys, you're like the tennis guy is the deck is the most fun. I say we should have the Moki Moki player.
oh
He
yes,
was great.
Yes.
please.
But okay, please continue.
Um, but for the payoff comment, sadly, Gravekeepers as a deck has. I use Supernaturalist as our boss monster. Technically, is Oracle.
Mhm.
So if they want to give the deck a big payoff boss monster, maybe the skill will be if you can tribute summon Oracle if you control a Gravekeeper, even if you already normal summon this turn, and if you do it, he has all three effects.
That
Ooh,
sounds
okay,
cool.
yeah.
That would be
Um,
cool. It's not broken because Oracle is not that good.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely like to see a skill for Cosmo. I would like to see a skill for magical muskets. I would like to see a skill for mech knights. You know, I mean, this archive skill for Crusadia and then just generic link decks is a good start, but we need more skills for decks that are good, that are popular. Like, where's our Dynamist skill, right? Like, if
Oh
we got a
hell yeah, that was
Dynamist
so
skill,
good. I
Dynamist
would
is
love that.
already like Dynamist would be good if they.
Yeah,
I'm so frustrated. Like,
Would
we
would
got the
would
Unite.
Dynamist be good with their trap if the trap is added?
I mean,
I think it would
as
need a
I
skill with that as well because
they would
if
need a
you're already
skill.
using a zone
Yeah,
for your spell,
they would need a skill where they get pendulum zones. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, I think Dynamists. Okay, just for if I haven't voiced or if this is the first video you watched, I'm an avid pendulum hater. Dynamists
ouch.
is the funnest pendulum deck I've ever played.
It is.
I
Um.
love Dynamists. I
Okay.
think the time has passed for the trap to be released as a normal card, but
Mhm.
if they
Yeah,
gave us a skill to go with it, maybe.
skill with the trap.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about like what the archive skills could be, right? This could be another situation where they generically just fix some of the problems with the game. Like, imagine if there was an archive skill that everyone could play, and it just said, maybe like if you have 8 spells or 8 traps in your deck, you start the game with 5 spell and trap zones instead of 3.
I could see that, or
Instant,
give you the
instant,
pendulum card.
instant crystal beast skill.
Yeah,
Um, but what about and then there could also be a skill where it's like you start the game with 10 cards in your extra deck instead of 8, and then like there's another small benefit like if you have a monster in your extra monster zone, you can draw a card or some or maybe like gain life points or something like just a minor benefit to pay, to also give you like you can have 2 extra cards and there's no other restrictions. It's literally just does this bother you? Does this interfere with your deck? 5 cards. Maybe there's like a skill where you can have 5 monster zones, but you have to be like running only monsters or something like that. Like imagine a monster mash skill where you could, if you're running 20 to 30 monsters and no other cards in your deck, you can have 5 monster zones. That would actually be really interesting. What could you do with that? That would make pendulum decks a lot more interesting because you have the pendulum deck which has 5 zones, but they don't have any spell and traps, but they don't need they don't have any pendulum zones, but they don't need them because they're not running any spells and traps, so they can run the regular 3 for that. So it would be interesting to see what we could do with archive skills that basically let people like go back to the real game for decks that need it.
yes. I think even just the idea of giving because this is the thing. If Duel Links, like I said before, it was designed around the anime.
Mhm.
If it was only anime decks in there, great. But because of the anime reliance, there's a lot of decks that are really or Stardix could get a skill of their own, maybe.
Yeah, and not keep stealing Yuseis.
Not
That-
keep stealing you.
they
Yeah.
would still do it. That skill is ridiculous.
uh, I mean, Tenyi doesn't need it, but you
Tenyi
know,
does not need it. Tenyi does
The
not need
please
skill
do
to
not.
Earth Arctics would be add radiation to your hand. Done.
it. Mm,
That
that
would
would
be.
that
Yeah, I
would
know,
be
I know.
pretty good.
It'd be pretty jokes, wouldn't it? But I think
Oh,
I've been
no,
a
no.
bit.
Add radiation to your hand, and then add Big Dipper from outside your deck to your deck, so that you never have to open Big Dipper.
Wow.
Instant, like the number of our starting players doubles as soon as they do that.
Well, it's a fun deck, but yeah, it might be a bit much. Um, I think just whilst all your skill suggestions have been rather extravagant, um, like, do we think adding a ritual spell or adding a polymerization, perhaps in a similar manner to this mystical space typhoon's been added,
Mhm.
do we think that's out of the picture? I think that's probably more realistic, if anything.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So like a skill that lets you like let's say it says during this turn you cannot special summon any monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters if you set poly or nothing if you set a ritual spell, and then set a poly or a ritual spell from your deck to your field. And that way, like, you activate the skill and then you pass priority because you set a card, or well, you don't pass priority, but you can activate the card, or if you didn't activate the card immediately, your opponent could interact with it, and then you just get to you get to play it. Yeah, that's definitely good. That does lead me to another topic that I want to cover. So, unless you guys have anything else that's eating you about archive skills, I want to move on.
We can
No.
make posts about it or whatever. So this is a good transition. Yeah.
Mhm. So, the big other topic about skills is that they do not start chains, and that is and in this section we can also cover Chrome's concerns about how skills are weird and they're not actual cards. Um, So there are some really weird situations, and to Konami's credit, let's be nice to Konami here. We've been bullying Konami. To Konami's credit, with Bonds That Illuminate the Future, which is the worst skill they've ever designed, but it is they did make an effort. You do have to flip the monsters. You set them face down, so you do have to flip them, and flip summoning a monster does pass priority to your opponent. So they
Yeah, we're
did
seeing
give
that
you
with more skills now, aren't we? Like
mhm,
just the Ubel we just
the
saw.
Ubel skill, yeah.
There's some flipping involved.
Yes, so you are passing priority to your opponents arbitrarily. You are giving them a chance to respond. I the Zhang Sheng and Zhang Qi skill when it came out drove me crazy because it
Hated it.
always let you pendulum summon without any interaction. Because it activated the raging pendulum at the very least. Raging pendulum required you to activate the two cards before you could use the skill, so your opponent could cosmic one of your pendulum zones, and that was some interaction. But for the most part, skills are very uninteractive, and that means that the more flashy they make the skill, the more frustrating it is. Like the skill Black Rose Gale, it says if you control a special summon Black Rose Dragon, you can destroy all cards in the field. That's okay. First of all, destroying all cards on the field without starting a chain is really dumb. But also, it doesn't consider it as being destroyed by card effects, which means that the skill can destroy cards that can't be destroyed by card effects. So you can for example Black Rose Dragon Dingirsu, which you're not supposed to be able to do.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy stuff.
Mhm.
And this makes us think of like it might need some fixing. Um, and of course, there's always just the case of what if skills did just allow interaction and chaining, and they didn't override other aspects of the game so much.
I don't know that they could. I imagine that if
It
that
would
was
be a
something,
lot of coding to do
yeah,
it.
that's the thing. I feel like they've probably the fact that they've started adding these things where they force interaction is an admission of defeat on their part that they really can't code it otherwise.
Yeah, it kind of makes me also think of another thing. Perhaps this wouldn't be um, as much of a fix, and a lot of skills already do this, but they announce the skill at the start of the game,
Hmm.
so you can, in theory, know what you're playing around, and you can also know, oh, I won't be able to interact at this point, and kind of formulate your strategy perhaps around that.
Hmm.
But there are some skills that you technically don't know until you've either kind of just read what your opponent's doing, or until they just activated them, and then you're like, well, I didn't see that coming. So
Well,
yeah,
let me pull up the Hero Alliance skill real quick, because
go on.
this is the skill that people that like cause the most frustration, and I think even Mechlord was complaining about this. The problem with Hero Alliance is it says once per duel, the following effect can be used to turn you of normal summoned elemental hero Neos. So the skills that have come after this have stated that you have to have the card face up, because Hero Alliance is so frustrating. So like the Magician's Magic skill,
Yeah.
it allows you to draw Secrets of Dark Magic if you have a face-up Dark Magician when you activate the skill. But Hero Alliance doesn't require Neos to be on the field. And the problem with that is if you draw Super Poly with the skill doesn't pass priority, and Super Polymerization does not allow for interaction. So the only interaction that you can do with Hero Alliance is to remove Neos from the field before they activate the skill. But the problem with that is if you remove Neos from the field, they're just not going to draw Super Poly. They could just add Polymerization and then still play the game.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a mechanic in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's essentially like a lingering effect. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you remove the card afterwards, or if you choose to like target and negate that card after its effect has happened, the effect won't be negated. It will continue throughout, I think, the rest of the turn. And
Yes,
that's
and
essentially that, but in a
Mm.
skill.
yes, and lingering effects are probably the second most annoying thing in Yu-Gi-Oh for players besides missing timing.
Yeah, I think the issue with our skills interact is kind of in the same way. There's an argument to be made like, oh, negates are not as good or floodgates are not as good if the skills can bypass them. But at the same time, it doesn't feel good to have your opponent just ignore your board.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Um,
Do we have any like apart from, I guess, apart from just nerfing these aspects of these skills, do we have any other suggestions on how they
I think it.
they either avoid or they change these skills to make them more suitable?
I think it's more. I don't know how they would redesign these skills, but I think the skills need to be designed with a different mindset. Like I said, the Avramax skill is a good example of how to design a good skill for me. It requires a lot of deck building around it. It has a potentially really powerful effect, uh, but it helps the deck in a single way that is not continuous or lingering. Or I think skills, because they operate in a plane above the cards, they need to be designed around that in mind. Like maybe some skills will be fixed if they're like once per duel or once every 2 turns or something like that, in my opinion.
so I think that a lot of the changes that have happened to skills recently have been aimed at addressing some of the problems with skills. So, for
Mhm.
example, we now have to flip summon a lot of monsters, which passes priority. Additionally, a lot of cards that add a spell to the hand set it to the field instead, like the rocket skill and like the Destiny Hero skill. And the benefit of that is that you can guarantee the card will be used for its intended purpose. And the reason why that's important is because of the other hero skill, Hero Flash, which you guys might not remember this meta, but Hero Flash was very polarizing
Awful.
because it allowed you to basically add all these cards to your hand. And the reason why that was a problem was because people didn't use them for the intended purpose of buffing their hero cards. They used them as discard fodder for cards like Karma Cut.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So
big stooly deck.
yes. So Konami having skills that set cards as opposed to putting them in your hand is again them responding to existing problems and abuse and fixing it. And it also allows you to, like for example, the Destiny Hero skill. It puts both polymerization on the field and malicious in your graveyard at the same time. So your opponent has your opponent has one interaction or the other. You either have to immediately activate Poly, or you have to immediately activate the Destiny, like Malicious from your graveyard. If you activate Poly, your opponent can respond by banishing a card from your graveyard, so you don't get Malicious. And if you activate Malicious, your opponent can respond by destroying a spell trap on the field, so you don't get Poly. So
Yeah, I liked enacting that in Ursartix.
yes, because Ursartix can do
And
both.
yeah, so I would keep the spell trap destroyer in hand, and then when they used malicious to summon another malicious from the deck, of course I can pop that. But I could also just since they would have to sometimes summon, I could also like search a card to then banish from their grave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you have
Yeah,
the
the extra
extra deck,
interactivity.
the extra deck monster that allows you to search when they summon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Yes. So they are trying to add more interactivity to skills, and I think that this is an admission on Konami's part, whether they explicitly state it or not, that they cannot figure out how to allow for skills to pass priority because there's not a card, which is fair. Um, I guess they could, like, if they wanted to be super unintuitive about it, they could have skills that set cards, like add them to your hand, and you are required, your next action is to set the card, or because, and not activate the card, but set the card, so that you're like you force the passing in priority, just like you do with setting monsters. You force passing priority of, I set a card and now my opponent can respond to that by activating Cosmic Cyclone or something like that. That that could be something they do. I don't think they will, because that's really weird. They need to tone down the advantage, because okay, we've danced around it enough. Let's talk about, like, okay, the
The Synchron and Ursartix skill.
so no, I was gonna say the Blackluster Soldier skill is problematic because it allows you to run too many cards in your deck that are not related to your strategy, and it makes your deck very, it inflates the power of your deck because you have fewer bricks, and that is a problem. But the Synchron skill is a problem because it generates far too much advantage on the board. Um, and to Konami's credit, they haven't really made another skill like this since then. That doesn't change the fact that this skill is in the game. So this skill definitely needs to be nerfed. But this is probably the biggest miss that Konami has done, in my opinion. And the problem is the second skill, the second part of the skill. The second part of the skill is the only issue. I don't have any problem with the free synchro chase. I don't have any problem with the search and the set up your graveyard. I don't have any problem with the easy Quasar. All of that is completely fine. The problem is the second part, which is send all monsters you control to the graveyard. If the total original attack of the monster sent to the graveyard is 2,500 or more, set 2 random Signer Dragons with different names from out of 4 from outside your deck. So, to Konami's credit, they did try and make it so that you could interact with this skill by forcing you to flip some of these cards. But the problem is, you've used your interaction already by the time that they use a skill, because um, one of the big problems with this skill is it allows you to bypass cards like Warning Points and Book of Moon, cards that are intended to prevent you from summoning extra deck monsters, by simply using the card that you have to pay the cost of your skill, so that you can then basically synchro summon twice. Um, and that is extremely frustrating. Um, so you as the player are saying, okay, I can't let them summon Kite Drake, so I'm going to book this face down. I can't let them summon Crystal Wing, so I'm going to Warning Point this. And then they say, okay, well, I can't summon my big dangerous card, but instead I'm going to summon, Ancient Fairy Dragon and Blackwing Dragon, or they get to their extra deck monster. They summon, you know, Scarred Warrior, or they summon Crystal Wing, and you say, aha, this is their break point. Book of Moon. It's face down. I don't have to worry about the negate. I don't have to worry about anything else. And they say, okay, well, it has 2,500 attack points anyway, so I'm just going to send it. I'm going to get 2 other monsters. And, do you have any back row left? No, I don't, because I've already used my back row. Well, okay. And these cards are not activating effects, so you can't. It's not a summon. So, like, for example, you can't play a card like Horn of Heaven, if we had Horn of Heaven. Um, and it's not a you're not, like, using cards to set up the summon, so you can't negate a card. Like, you can't play Divine Wrath to negate and destroy one of the materials that's setting up for the Synchro Summon. And when the cards flip face up, they're not activating their effects. They're just big beaters that attack you directly and destroy your monsters. And it's just such a bad feeling. Uh,
I personally shared that feeling when
yeah.
the Speedroid skill would revive the
Clear
Clear
Wing,
Wing and then
yes.
attack for game.
Exactly. That's
Um,
it. And
yeah,
those were released around the same time.
yeah.
And I do agree. That skill that summon clearing from the graveyard is also very unintuitive. Like Chrome said, it allows you to special summon from the graveyard even when you can't. It bypasses both the annoying Sealed Tombs effect and it bypasses Necro Valley, and it lines up so perfectly, like with the Kite Drake blow the field up, and then you immediately get 4,100 attack points, so you can go for lethal. It's completely unnecessary, and it's like stupid. Like, why can you do that? Why can you just send a monster to the graveyard to summon a buffed Clearwing? Like, for example, like if you want to focus on Clearwing as like this midpoint ace monster, like has a negate, that sort of thing. Okay, I can understand that, but it doesn't need extra attack points. At the
I
very
think
least, with the Clearwing skill, they did nerf it to where you have to spend a card to do this. But still, like, yeah, it's dumb.
indeed. So do you think that a skill like this that is it has problematic parts and quite a few people agree that it does deserve enough. Do you think it should be the priority though? Like when of course synchrons aren't so high in terms of power and I think Ursotics have just hit tier 3 or something.
Well, the reason
Um
why the
yeah.
skill, so the skill got nerfed, or well, the deck got nerfed. The deck was a priority,
Mhm.
and then they nerfed the cards. They put Synchron to 3. They put Tuning to 3, and they put Tatsunoko to 1, and they put Croc to 1. And they've unnerfed that for the most part. Now that's not popular, but that felt really disgusting because basically it made the people who wanted to play the deck have to go into the box more so they could get synchro overtake to make up for the fact they couldn't run tuning. It was the same deck, they just had to run synchro. They had to run the new card instead of the old card, and Croc is still limit 1 for some reason. So if the deck was a problem, they should have nerfed the skill.
Yeah.
They chose to limit cards, which saw play in other decks. So yes, this should have been the priority. Maybe it's not the priority anymore, but they made a
Yeah,
mistake
that's
of
what I was
not
referring to.
addressing it. Yeah,
Yeah, I was just saying like which would you nerf first, this or the BLF skill? But yeah, I agree with your statement of the past.
yeah.
I think that, of course, like decks with over that are overrepresented in the ladder or in tournaments should be the priority.
Hmm.
It does not change the fact that this skill should be addressed at some point.
Yes.
Eventually
Because
getting to it, yeah.
if you leave it untouched, it's only a matter of time before another synchro deck takes advantage of it.
And they did the same thing with the Clearwing skill. They put Piper to 2, they put Yo-Yo to 2, and then they just said, okay, fine, we have to nerf the skill. They nerf the skill, and then they see there's no problem with the cards, and then they bring all the cards back. It's like, if you acknowledge that the skill is causing too much advantage, then you should be willing to change the skill.
I think one example, did they nerf the Destiny Hero skill?
No, they put Malicious to 3.
Yeah, so that's a case of where it happened the other way around, where they did what they did nerf the cards, and then it did bring the deck down. And even though we all agree that the skill is powerful, sometimes they hit sometimes they seem to want to hit always the cards first, and sometimes that's the right call. And then in cases like these two synchro skills, it wasn't the call; it was the skills that needed to be hit first.
Well,
So there's a huge misjudgment, it seems.
yeah, well, that's the difference, right? Because these are synchro decks. These are synchro
Mhm.
decks, and you don't get the bond that illuminates the future does give you a little bit of setup, but for the most part, you're not getting help with your synchro play. Like, yes, you get the free dice to go into Crystal Wing, but you had to make Clear Wing first. Um, the skill giving you the extra like power on the board is the problem. Whereas with the Destiny Hero skill, the problem was again that you're generating cards out of nowhere, and therefore you can run infinite back row. So the reason why putting Malicious to 3 fixed that issue was because, well, now you can't run so powerful of infinite back row. They have to run like they're running Book of Moon, of course, but I think they're running like
So I cannot tell.
offerings to the two.
Nice. Well, I guess they draw enough outside the normal draw phase.
Yeah,
in that,
they have Celestial. That's
Makes
funny.
sense.
That's actually brilliant because Celestial requires you to have no
Yeah.
cards in your hand. Oh my
Genius.
god, that's genius! I love this.
Pretty funny. Oh no, you've been converted. You're gonna start playing this
I
degenerate
I mean
backward deck.
I love heroes to begin with.
Yeah, I know. We've both been at them a lot. Oh, what I also find really funny is how Malicious is limited to 3, but you still get to like play the extra like. You can still play another limit 3 card in it, but it still adds the limit 3 extra melee to the deck. It's weird, that isn't it?
Yeah, I mean this was how they had to do it. Like they could, I guess they
Yeah.
could have put like Malicious to 3 and Plasma to 3 to like rip your 3 ofs out of the deck entirely, but that probably would have
Anyway,
felt bad.
With all these back row decks that are made from the skills, it makes me start thinking perhaps one of the limits should be you have to just play X number of monsters in the deck
Yeah.
as opposed to amount of
Or
traps.
X number of specific monsters, even depending
Yeah,
on the
no,
skill.
but even then, let's say if you didn't want, let's say if you wanted to keep it generic-ish, or like allow them to play tech monsters, then like just X number of monsters, and it's like a high amount of monsters.
Well, here's the
then-
problem with that.
Yeah,
So the Mech Lord skill, which I'm playing right now, has that
Go on.
requirement where you have to half your deck has to be Mech Lords.
Fair.
And the response to that is people just play 30 cards.
Yeah,
So look at this. So
Yeah.
you have to play half your deck is Mech Lords. So here's 15 Mech Lords and then 15 back row, and it's fine because the skill sends a monster from your hand to the graveyard to draw a search card, which then draws you the monster that you need. You just play your normal turn, and then you just generically have a bunch of back row.
What
Yeah,
about
like-
what about? Okay. I'm reversing that on its head. What about you're only allowed to play so many traps or spells?
See, now that would be interesting.
Ah, okay, cool. But we're thinking, we're cooking.
Yeah, like if for me the counterproductive the thing there is
Oh,
if you're
actually,
going
hold on,
to-
real quick, Crow, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
or Chrome, if you don't mind. They actually did that with the new skills, Harmak.
Ooh.
So
Hooray.
the reason why people say that the Altergeist skills suck is because the Altergeist skills require you to run no spells
Ha!
because there are no
Oh,
Altergeist
They're,
spells.
they're a trap-based deck, yeah.
Yeah, there are
Yeah.
trap-based decks. So it says this skill can only be used if you have no spells, and then there's another one that says a duel containing an equal amount of Altergeist monsters or traps and 7 of each, and then
Well, at least they're experimenting.
this skill can only be used if you have no spells and at least one monster in your deck, and the only monsters in your deck or extra deck are Altergeist monsters.
I mean,
Reminds me a bit of
fe-
Super
feels,
Heavy Samurai.
feels bad that Altergeist are being used as the little experiment, but Altergeist players, I'm sorry,
It's
this
for
is
the good of
necessary.
Duel Links.
Yeah. Yeah, we need you to take the fall, like the lab rats.
I'm sorry, little one.
Yeah, no, but that means importantly, you might think, well, what spells would they even run besides Mystical Space Typhoon? Well, I have a note for you that let's see. They are all different attributes, but Multi-Faker is dark, which means that, and if you could run like non-Altergeist monsters, people would run definitely this little number. What is it? I can't remember. The one that lets you banish dark to draw 2.
Gotcha. I think that name's escaping me as well, unfortunately.
Lord of Darkness.
Allure of Darkness.
Allure of
Thank you,
Darkness,
Tom.
yes. Thank you, Top.
Little guest cameo.
Uh,
But what I was going to say before is basically the thing that I think that makes the Maclord skill for me badly designed is if you're going to ask the player to play certain ratios to make the deck less consistent, don't give it search tools.
I mean, fair, but that's the problem. Like they want you to
I
get
know.
search tools, so I mean, that's.
I mean, if you're gonna give them search tools, which is valid for a deck, the condition needs to be different.
Yeah.
That's my point. Like the condition needs to be, uh, either playing no spells, so you're limited in the card pool you get to use, either playing I don't know, being once per duel, or having less life points, or being up until a certain turn.
All right.
Yeah, that was my main point with that.
Well, I can hear my audience complaining. So, real quick, since we're on the Ultra tangent, I'm gonna real quick bring this up. Like I was talking about how people are complaining the skill is bad. Let's take a look at this skill right
Yeah.
here. Um, Harmac, listen to this. Can
Yeah.
be used the turn you did not link summon, but
Ooh.
you control an Ultra link monster. Set one personal spoofing from outside the deck. It cannot be activated this turn.
What the fuck?
That reminds me of patch
Is this a
recreation.
joke?
This is not a joke. So this is an indication that we are not getting personal spoofing as a card. So it is going to be like locked to this skill, and this skill is awful. Now, personal spoofing, admittedly, is a ridiculously powerful trap. For those that don't know, once per turn, you can shuffle one Altergeist from your hand or face-up field into the deck to draw an Altergeist monster from your deck to your hand. That is a soft once, first of all, and also it can be the same card. You could return an Altergeist to draw the same card, which is not something that Konami typically permits. Um, and it's really disgusting, but but requiring you to control an Altergeist Link monster during the turn you did not Link summon, and
Yeah,
then
it's a
you
non-skill, basically.
explicitly can't activate it when every other deck that sets traps allows you to activate the traps that turn is crazy bad.
I
Now,
think
Yeah.
it's
to
overly punishing, either for because they don't want. I think this is someone saying, "Oh, we have a problem with too much back row, and we're releasing a back row deck.
mhm.
Let's overcorrect."
Well, here's the
I
thing.
also feel like that this card is perhaps going to get forgotten about. So this skill is going to get forgotten about Konami because not many people will play it, and then it'll be quite a few years from now where we ever get the card released, and I don't think they'll change it. They'll just leave it be, unfortunately, unless if they really wanted it to be played. But
To
maybe one
be
of the other skills will fulfill that.
to be very kind to Konami, they do have Ultrageist Revitalization, which allows you to revive a Link monster in your graveyard. So you don't have to have the Link monster stay on the board through your opponent's turn. It can be destroyed and then you revive it on your turn. But that does mean that you have to like have this set and then not use it during your opponent's turn. So they could like kill your Link monster and then you have to survive them OTKing you without using your trap that you could use to keep yourself alive, so that you can use it on your turn so that you can fulfill the conditions of your skill. So very frustrating.
Yeah,
Um,
rather saddening, honestly.
um,
I
We
feel
do
for
think
our
that they have.
players. I really do.
Like, do we not think that they have any viable skills upcoming?
the skill is the Crusadia skill.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, at least they've got that
Yep.
archive skill.
Well, here's the other skills. Since you asked, whopping Altergeist monsters you control gain 50 attack points for each
Right.
Altergeist trap in your graveyard.
50 attack points.
Wow,
Oh my
this is
god.
worthless. This is worthless.
So if you have 6 Altergeist traps in your graveyard, then your monsters gain 300 attack points at all times, which is a max level ties that bind that is always active. But you had to put
May
6
I
cards in your
suggest
graveyard.
tie off bonds?
Nice little cameo at the end. I
Thanks.
don't know how far we've gone through the video so far.
Oh,
but,
we are like 2.5 hours in at this point.
Yeah. How many more sections do we plan to do?
This is the last one. I'm gonna be wrapping
Okay.
this up soon.
I have one like very small section at the end that I wish to add.
Yeah, sure. I still have time. Let's
Cool, let
finish
me
up
know.
this.
Cool.
Let's see. All right, real quick, Chrome. I'm gonna speed run these since Carmack asked about it.
Yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead.
All right. So, at the beginning of the duel, add one monster to your extra deck, which is probably gonna be Altergeist Prima Banshee because that's her ace. The following effect can be used once per turn. Select one Altergeist monster you control and move that to another one of your main monster zones. Altergeists do care about like pointing to specific cards, so this is kind of okay, but it's like her level 1 skill. The weird thing is it's level 1 skill that lets you play like the ace monster before you've opened it in the box, but it has a restriction. Those don't usually have a restriction. So it has the restriction of you have no spells in your extra deck, and and the only monsters in your deck are spellcasters. Like, pretty rough. But Anyway,
pretty scared of Altergeist. I wonder if adding the
I mean, the Rush characters had their aces skill locked behind the fact you don't have any tribute masters.
I know, but that was also surprising.
I don't like this trend.
I don't either.
Continuing.
Harmak, go ahead.
So then I said like continuing on from that skill.
Oh, sure, that's fine.
The next one.
Yep. All right, so this is her actual skill from the anime. It's I think it's called Miracle Cure or Secret Cure. Secret Cure. Can be used on turn 4 and onwards before your normal draw. Reveal up to 3 cards from the top of your deck and choose the first monster revealed. Add it to your hand, then return 1 card from your hand back to the deck. Both players' life points increase by an amount equal to the attack of that monster. This skill can only be used if you begin the duel with a deck containing an equal amount of Altergeist monsters and traps, and at least 7 of each. So, Altergeist monsters all have less than 2,000 attack points. So this will be a modicum of health. It does say that it happens before your normal draw, so I guess you are going to be able to draw 2 cards, but you're putting 1 card from your hand back to the deck. So,
okay, still pretty cool. It's like a little mini mulligan. Or
yeah,
changing of cards in hand.
Yeah, it lets you. I mean, that's pretty good if you're playing a bunch of traps, being able to kind of swap a trap for a monster that you want. But you don't get to choose the monster; it's the first monster, which is weird. I feel like they should just let us choose. I feel like they should just let us Pot of Prosperity on turn 4, but whatever. Then we already talked about this one. Can be used before your normal draw each time your life points decrease by 1,000. One of the cards from your normal draw will be a random Altergeist trap in your deck. Kind of okay. Can be used before your normal draw if you took 2,000 or more battle and effect damage so far. So I think that means that it doesn't count paying life points, interestingly enough. Return 1 face-up Altergeist monster or continuous trap to your deck, so that one of the cards from your normal draw this turn will be a random Altergeist monster in your deck. So that's kind of like a personal spoofing, but it has to be a card that you have face-up, so you're minusing yourself to draw a random card when you could have drawn that card anyway. Seems pretty bad.
Definitely not worth it because it's just random.
Yep. And then this is the card. This is the skill that I think we're actually going to play, which is, well, no, I think we're going to play the Crusadia skill. But this is the skill that they would want us to play, I think. Can be used on turn 2 and onwards. During this turn, you use a skill. You can activate 1 Altergeist Emulatif. The turn it is set. You cannot activate any other spells or trap cards. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck the turn after you use the skill. The skill can only be used if you have no spells and at least 1 monster in your deck, and the only monsters in your deck or extra deck are Altergeist monsters. Altergeist Emulatif is a special summons as a level 4, 1400 attack, 1800 defense. Is also a trap. If it summons this way while it is in the monster zone, other Altergeist traps you control cannot be destroyed by card effects, and neither player can target them with card effects. So
nice.
The benefit of this card is that it allows you to buff Hextia. Because Hextia gains attack points equal to the original attack of each Altergeist monster it points to. So it has 1,500 attack points normally. Emulatif has 1,400 attack points, so this will buff Hextia to 2,900.
That's pretty good, and also the protection for your back row, kind of, right?
Kind of. Yeah, but it's pretty restrictive, and I don't think that it will be that good. So, yeah, I'm guessing it's going to be, you can gain 2,000 life points if you have Prima Banshee, and then also you get to return all your Altergeist links back to your extra deck and summon Avramax.
Okay, cool.
All right, that is the end of this section. What do you want to talk about, Harmak?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to mention, with all how doom and gloom, at least I have been, I would like to add, perhaps we can just talk about, how we mentioned at the beginning, we sometimes discuss to perhaps change our minds or like inform ourselves of other things, and that can affect us. And I wanted to know if well, I know myself, and I wanted to know if any of you have had their mind changed at all, or like feel like you understand a new perspective now that we've gone through all this. I myself, I'm actually a bit more hopeful in the terms of the future of Duel Links, because I hadn't considered the idea that Rush Duel players can join the game and they can enjoy Rush Duels for a long period of time, and they can essentially save their resources and then potentially attempt to transition over to Speed Duel every now and again. I just always kind of thought of that people would stick with Rush Duel, and there wouldn't be too much mingling between. and also Duel Links wasn't very inviting to new players. But I can now see that Rush Duel can be inviting to new players, and that might encourage people to go back to Speedduel and try it out. Which, yeah, that's made me happy from the sounds of that. Chrome, do you have any similar thoughts
I definitely.
in terms of your reflections? Do you have any positive reflections on what we've all discussed?
To be honest, when I entered the video, I was coming from a place of pessimism, specifically with the leaked skills. But this whole conversation has put my mind at ease a little bit more. Specifically, I was not fully aware of what was being done with archive skills and the Altergeist. So there, I see an intention of correcting some of the things that have been happening. I'm sorry the Altergeist has to be the lab rats for this, but it's for the better good, the greater good. So someone has to suffer. Uh, and I'm also glad that new players are immediately thrown into Rush, because I've been saying this a lot. Rush for me is one of the better entry points into the Yu-Gi-Oh, let's call it multiverse.
I would say as of now, fully, until like perhaps it might develop to a place where it might be a bit harder to get into. But as of now, it seems pretty good.
Yeah, even peering a little bit into the future, 2 years later, on the OCG version of Rush, I still think OCG version is still very beginner friendly. So if they don't do the thing they did with Duel Links and either make it more complex through skills or power creep the game in a speed that it's not comfortable with, I think we're good. And they have already shown that they are taking it into consideration. No, just print rush cards, you cowards.
Top, do you have anything that you want to say about skills?
I don't think they are that good. It's mainly because it's either too random, or it's locking you behind something, or weird condition. Hopefully we see better skills.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, and then for myself, Harmak is turning my podcast into a children's TV show where we talk about what we learned today.
Happy endings, yeah.
Let's see. Did my perspective change at all? Well, let's see. I agree with Chrome that um, that skills serve a purpose of making like explosive moments that are memorable, and that not everything can be replicated with real cards. Um, but yeah, for the most part, my opinion is that skills the best skills are the ones that add something to the game rather than just making up for something that something else has been taken away.
I can agree with that.
I think
At the
that's a
end of
good
the day,
conclusion. Yeah.
yeah, at the end of the day, this is a different format and it should feel like it more than just trying to replicate another format.
Like I like this. I like this skill. The skill that lets you like heal. The skill that was actually in the anime, because this is something Altergeist can't do normally. Um, whereas a skill that's just like, um, you can activate Amulet's Health the turn it's sets. That's just making up for the fact that maybe we don't have Malwisp yet, or maybe we don't have Multi-Faker at 3. Like, it's just like, oh, you need more bodies on the board for your tributes and for everything. So it's like, okay, well, I mean, I guess. Anyway, cool. Well, thank you very much, both of you. This is Harmak in the Fright for Nightmare section, or never ending,
yeah.
never ending Frightmare, and then Chrome in Sacred Burial Grounds. Of course, both of you, thrilled to have you back with me, and I will be putting this up hopefully later today. Thank you for joining me. This is Seraphi. I was thrilled to have you all with me.